do not have a magic map, but what we do have for you tonight are CIAA and SIAC championship scenarios. Welcome to another show. Tonight is the round table with us in a round table in a squared box. But anyway, I'm Kendrick. I'm trying to make the Bayou Classic great again. There's Chris Stevens. He's got questions. He's concerned. Jared Hoffman says America going America. And Kim Rashad survived Tuesday night. We're going to talk about Tuesday night later on in the show. But first, we're going to talk about football, and there's going to be a lot of it, a lot of important football, a lot of football games this weekend, going to decide championship berths and conference implications and who wins divisions possibly. So we're going to get all that tonight and break it all down for you. As always, we're going to start out with the 5 games to watch for Saturday, and they include a lot of Division II games. Virginia Union versus Virginia State, Johnson C. Smith versus Livingstone, Albany State versus Fort Valley State, Miles College against Tuskegee, and South Carolina State will play Howard. And all of these games have some type of conference championship implications. And so Jared Hoffman, he puts these together every single week for us. So Jared, obviously the games are most important. Which ones to you are the most important?
Well, the most important to me will probably be Johnson C. Smith and Livingstone. You know, Johnson C. Smith, there's no way to sugarcoat it. They got embarrassed last weekend against Fayetteville State with a chance to get to the CIAA championship game. Now they're in a situation where they could potentially be out of it if Virginia State wins and they lose. So I think that's the one that's most important to me. Obviously, Virginia Union and Virginia State is probably the most fun game that'll probably happen this weekend because, you know, both teams have running backs and Jada Byers and Jamil Williams that are both big play running backs and could break for big gains at any moment. You know, so I think that one's probably the most fun to watch. But I think the one with the most stakes to me is Johnson C. Smith and Livingstone, because Johnson C. Smith is going from a situation where they were winning their in to now lose and you could potentially be out. You know, but I can't discount the stakes in the SIAC. There are a lot of scenarios that can go down. The only thing that we know for sure in the SIAC is that Miles is the #1 seed. No matter what happens this weekend, they are the #1 seed that is cemented. Tuskegee still has a path to the SIAC championship game, but they need a lot to go right for them. We'll get into those scenarios later down the line, but Tuskegee needs a lot of help and they need a big win over Miles, but Miles is playing its best football right now, and that's looking like a tall task for them. Albany State and Fort Valley State in the Fountain City Classic. Those who follow the SIAC will remember last year Fort Valley State needed a win to get to the SIAC championship game, but lost to Albany State, and Albany State overcame long shot odds to be able to clinch a berth in the SIAC championship game before losing to Benedict. That same scenario is in play now. Fort Valley State needs a win, and they are in the SIAC championship game. Albany State needs a win, and they have a lot they need to overcome in order to get to the SIAC championship game. So that has a lot of stakes to it. But we can't keep it Division II for too long. We got South Carolina State, who is coming off a big win against North Carolina Central last Thursday. They have a chance to potentially clinch in this take one step closer to clinch in this game against Howard. They need a win and a Morgan State loss in order to take one step closer to winning next week and clinching. You know, so but Howard is not an easy out. They're coming off a shutout win against Delaware State, so that's going to be a pretty tough task for South Carolina State. But they're coming off a big win, and they're playing their best football right now, led by Eric Phoenix in that defense. And so, yeah, those are my 5 games to watch.
All right, Chris Stevens, what game or games for you will be following closely this weekend?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and say that Howard and South Carolina State is the one to watch for me, because this is a chance for South Carolina State to put, a firm grasp on first place in the MEAC. And yes, they would only be their 3rd MEAC game, and they still have Morgan State and Norfolk State left. But the 2 contending teams that everybody thought would be in the mix at the beginning of the year, North Carolina Central and Howard, South Carolina State would already have wins over them. So the only thing South Carolina State has to do is beat Howard and not mess themselves over against Morgan State, Norfolk State, and the MEAC is theirs. But of course, in this league, as we know, it's a week to week thing. Everybody just goes, you'll get an upset every now and then. I mean, we just saw Norfolk State beat Howard a couple of weeks ago, and then turn around and lose an overtime game to Morgan State the previous week, then the following week. So. I guess from a D2 perspective, I'm really interested in how that Fountain City class is going to, work itself out, because there's so much that has to go right for Albany State to even get there, that even a win doesn't guarantee them anything. But Fort Valley State, it's really simple: win and you're in. And this was the same, like Jared said, this was the same scenario last year, and they came up short. So now this is a chance of redemption for them, and very much looking forward to seeing how that game goes.
Cameron Shad, the game you're gonna be watching closely on Saturday.
Oh, well, without question, it's Howard versus South Carolina State. As a matter of fact, I'll even go so far as to say that, given where we are right now with the state of the MEAC, it's likely, assuming that Howard wins on Saturday, it's likely that, depending on how well Howard does, if Howard wins, I got a feeling that Howard will be on Jared's HBCU games to watch the following week. So just because of what the implications involved. So without question, it's South Carolina State and Howard. I am surprised that there isn't a SWAC game on the schedule. And I understand why, because the big game is actually probably for next week when Jackson State plays Alabama State, which I guess for all intents and purposes will likely be the game that decides who clinches the SWAC East, given where we are right now. But if I'm not mistaken, I think there is a scenario involved with, we talked about this on Monday, that if Southern defeats Texas Southern, no, Southern plays who?
Bethune-Cookman.
So if Southern defeats Bethune-Cookman, and if Alcorn loses to Texas Southern, then Southern potentially clinches the SWAC West, which is an interesting scenario as well. So, but with respect to the games to watch, Howard and South Carolina State, and even though I think it's safe to say that South Carolina State is legit, to go on a run and to take down Howard, only because of what Chris told me earlier about Larry Scott's level of confidence that that loss against Norfolk State was nothing but a blip, and that he was pretty he was pretty confident that his team would rebound. So South Carolina State and Howard, that's going to be the game to watch for me.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be the JCSU Livingstone game. I really want to see how the Golden Bulls bounce back from their first taste of adversity after losing to Fayetteville State last week and being shut out in the process and doing it at home. I want to see if Maurice Flowers can rally the troops and get them ready to play with another opportunity to clinch the championship berth. It'll be interesting to see how they play, and I want to see how they respond to adversity for the first time since last season, really. So that game I'm watching pretty closely. South Carolina State, Howard. I want to see if the Bulldogs can continue their momentum coming off a big home win against one of the top teams, not only in Black college football, but in the FCS. I want to see how they handle success playing against Howard, a team that was desperate, trying to stay alive in the MEAC race. So those are going to be a couple of games I'm going to be watching closely for this week. But this slate is pretty good, folks. Like, you can't go wrong with any game on this list. And all of them going to be closely contested, and they're going to mean something to every team that's out there. So it should be fun on Saturday. So we're going to talk about the CIAA championship chase. As Jared mentioned before, Virginia Union clinched a spot in the title game last week as a result of their 91-point win last week over Bluefield State, and JCSU losing to Fayetteville State. So they're already in. They're waiting on their opponent. And the CIAA this week released their championship scenarios to see who might face them in the title game. And it goes as follows for people who can't see us, only hear us. If Virginia Union wins and JCSU wins, that'll be the matchup for the title game. If Virginia Union wins, JCSU loses, and Winston-Salem State wins, the championship game will then be Virginia Union against JCSU.
Okay. If Virginia
Princeton,
Union
Salem
wins,
State wins.
okay, because
Yeah.
you're
Yeah,
freezing.
Union wins. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, that title game will be Virginia State versus Virginia Union. If Virginia Union loses and JCSU wins, Virginia Union, Virginia State, and JCSU will all be co-champions of the regular season, creating a chaotic three-way tie. And therefore, the title game will be Virginia Union versus Johnson C. Smith. So a lot to digest. The CIAA tried to make this as, I guess, digestible as possible for the scenarios. But the fact remains, if Johnson C. Smith wins, they play Virginia Union. Anything else happens, it gets kind of complicated. So, fellas, what do we?
Okay.
I think you froze again.
You froze. So let me ask the question. Because the thing that sticks out to me, what are the chances, and Jared, feel free, or Chris, what are the chances of Virginia Union losing and Johnson C. Smith winning, creating a three-way tie for the regular season? What are the realistic chances of that happening?
It's pretty realistic. I think Virginia State, first of all, that third scenario is wrong. It should be if Virginia State wins, Johnson C. Smith loses, and WSSU wins, because they have Virginia Union's record at 6-1. If they were to lose, it would be 5-2. But anyway, not important. I think it's very likely that Virginia State wins.
Oh boy. Okay. You
I ain't even do that myself. Huh?
go ahead.
He must have took me with him. But anyway, I think that Virginia State cannot be counted out because they're still a very good team. Yes, they lost to Virginia Union last year with a chance to get to the CIAA championship game. But I think this team is just as good as it was last year. Obviously, they lost some talent. They lost Willie Drew, who was a part of that dominant secondary last year. But I think they still have defensive talent. That, like I said, they have Jamil Williams. They got Romello Watson, I believe is his last name. Williams, excuse me. Sorry about that. Romello Williams at quarterback. Got Malik Hunter at wide receiver. So they have a lot of talent. So I think that if Virginia Union is not on their P's and Q's, or if they decide to rest their starters, I don't think they will rest their starters. But if there's any slippage within Virginia Union, a team that doesn't have to do anything, they don't actually have to do anything. So I think there's a good chance that they can catch Virginia Union napping. But ultimately, I think that Johnson C. Smith is going to handle business, and I don't think it's going to be a factor whether or not Virginia State wins.
Chris?
I want to believe in Johnson C. Smith so bad. Oh man, I do. I mean, literally, I've been talking this team up all year long. I mean, like I said, we've been waiting for shoes to drop on this team all year long, and the shoes haven't dropped yet. Well, one dropped last week in a 27-point loss to Fayetteville. So, and this is a Livingstone team that is not your baby cousin or niece or nephew's Livingstone. This is actually a good football team this year. So Johnson C. Smith is going to have to go into Salisbury on that light blue turf and play like they've never played before. So I'm going to err on the side of caution and pick Johnson C. Smith to see this through, but it wouldn't surprise me if Livingstone won. Because, I mean, again, this is the oldest remind you guys, this is the oldest black college football rivalry. These two played in the first HBCU football game way back in 1892. So there's a lot of history there. And what better way for Livingstone to clinch their first winning season in 9 years than to send Johnson C. Smith home?
Not winning season, their first CIAA championship berth. They had a winning season last year.
No, I mean Livingstone.
Oh, Livingstone. You're right. My bad.
Yeah.
My bad. Yeah.
Oh, good. But yeah, this will be Livingstone's first winning season since 2015. And what better way to clinch that than to send your oldest rival packing for the winter and the spring and the summer? So
yeah.
There's some.
Oh, my bad. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there's a lot, that has to go right. But I'm going to err on the side of caution and pick Johnson C. Smith to see this through.
Yeah, but a part of that, Chris, is that Livingstone not just leads the conference in takeaways. They're second in the country. They're tied for second in the country in takeaways. They lead in interceptions. What was Johnson C. Smith's problem last week? turnovers. So when you add that's a recipe for disaster for Johnson C. Smith. So even though I'm picking Johnson C. Smith to win this game, they have to be alert. They have to not be lethargic. They have to have some urgency from the opening, not even from the opening kickoff. From the moment they enter that locker room, they have to have that sense of urgency. They have to know that the way that we execute this game will determine whether or not our season ends tonight or whether or not we go to Salem and play for a CIAA championship, something we haven't done in over 50 years.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I'm picking the Golden Bulls to win only because, like, I know everybody waiting for LSU to drop all season, but up until last week, they had risen to every challenge. They had passed every test. And for a team that has won as much as they won these last 2 years, I'll be surprised if they drop 2 in a row. That's based on where they played, how well they played against really good competition all season long. I know their early season schedule might appear to be soft to some people, but as the season went on, as the games got bigger and as opponents got a little tougher, they rose to the occasion. So I'm going to pick them to win in Livingston. A tough place to play, obviously, but I think they pulled this one out. I think losing about 27 points woke them up. If it didn't, well, that's a problem. And so I think they use that motivation to go out there and win on Saturday. So I'm definitely picking them, and I think they play Virginia Union in the championship game in Salem. Yeah, so we have a consensus that we feel like Virginia Union and Smith might play for the title game, but you never know what might happen, man. Like, the CIAA is very competitive, and nothing is given, as we saw last week. So we won't know, like, how all going to play out until the final scores roll in. I lost my place because my toddler unplugged the internet. So there's that for you, everybody. That's why I was missing. No, not that one. Not that one. Okay.
There we go.
That's SIAC. That's SIAC. Miles is in the SIAC championship game, just like Virginia Union is in the championship game on CIAA side. They don't need to win to get in. They don't need to do anything to get in championship game, but there's still the question of who they will play. And so the SIAC today, they released their championship scenarios, and it goes as follows. Hope everybody can see that. Miles College, as we mentioned, is in their #1 seed after beating Morehouse last week. Fort Valley State. If the Wildcats are able to beat Albany State, they're #2 seed. They could be eliminated to Albany State, which means they lose their tiebreaker. So Fort Valley State wins, they're in pretty much. Clark Atlanta, they have an outside chance to get in. They beat Morehouse and Fort Valley State to play for the championship. Albany State win against Fort Valley, have us the ski loss and a Clark Atlanta loss. So that's for the key to win against Miles.
Kendrick
lost, the Clark Atlanta loss, and the Allen loss. Yes.
Kendrick, you're struggling, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're struggling.
I'm struggling. How am I struggling?
Your
Wi-Fi.
Your Wi-Fi. We'll
You provided me the
struggling.
first
Okay.
genuine
I'm
good
sorry
laugh
about that.
I've had all day.
Yeah, we need a laugh tonight, boy. But yeah.
But no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm glad that I could be entertainment. But
Go ahead. Finish it.
Yeah, but the scenario is laid out there. Miles College is in, and Fort Valley State can get in with a win. Everybody else need help, pretty much. So what do we think of these scenarios and who might play Miles in the championship game coming up down the road? Starting with Jared.
Believe it or not, I actually think that Clark Atlanta has the easiest road, because Fort Valley State winning your win, that's a tall task against an Albany State team that is very good. You know, Albany State obviously has to win, and they need Tuskegee to lose, and they need Clark Atlanta to lose. Clark Atlanta ain't losing to Morehouse. I'll tell you that now. And then Tuskegee needs Fort Valley State to lose. They need Clark Atlanta to lose, and they need Allen to lose. Fort Valley State could very well lose. Allen could very well lose. Clark Atlanta's not losing, and then you have to play Miles, who hasn't lost in a conference game all season. Clark Atlanta, all they need is for Morehouse to win and Fort Valley State to lose. If I'm a betting man, I'm taking Clark Atlanta, personally. Fort Valley State could very well beat Albany State. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying, if I'm looking at Fort Valley State against Albany State and Clark Atlanta against Morehouse, and who I think is most likely to win their respective matchups, I'm betting on Clark Atlanta, because outside of the Miles game and outside of the Savannah State game, they have been the best team. Now they've had some slip ups where they've had to come back late. They've had to overcome some slow starts, but against Morehouse, with all due respect to Morehouse, who plays hard, they simply do not have the talent to keep up with that Clark Atlanta team. So for me, the team that I actually think has the best chance of potentially overcoming the scenarios that are against them, I think it's Clark Atlanta. But that's why we play the games, because Fort Valley State could easily shut me up on Saturday.
Chris, your thoughts?
My thoughts are in line with Jared's. If I'm a betting man, and no, we don't do money lines and all that stuff here on HBCU Sports, so we can't help you there. But I like Clark Atlanta's chances a little more, because Morehouse, while they played better under Terrence Mathis, the fact remains is they still have one win. And Fort Valley, they've been in this situation before. This is the same situation. Winning you're in, and they lost to Albany State in the Fountain City Classic last year. So one thing in common that these teams have is that Savannah State absolutely, even though they're not anywhere in the chase, they deserve a ton of credit for giving us something to talk about this weekend, because their wins over Clark Atlanta and Fort Valley and Albany, have made this a very interesting scenario. But yeah, I'm with Jared. I feel like Clark Atlanta has the inside track, but if Fort Valley State is able to beat Albany, it wouldn't surprise me either.
Yeah, I agree with Jared and Chris. Like, I think Clark, despite them needing a little bit of help, I don't see them losing to Morehouse, and I don't see Fort Valley State beating Albany State. So I think and Clark Atlanta, just like John C. Smith, they played well all season, had some hiccups, but they're just too talented of a team not to go to the championship game. So I think they win that game on Saturday, and I think Fort Valley State loses, and I think they go ahead and play Miles for the championship, which would be a very good game, because Miles has a really good defense. I want to see that defense go against David Wright III in that one. So that'd be fun. Cameron Shaw, your thoughts?
I don't want to pretend like I really follow the SIAC a whole lot, but I will simply say this about Clark Atlanta. I like to see them in the title game. I just want to see them there, given what they've done this season. Their win earlier in the year against Bethune-Cookman. I think that would just kind of like just make everything right. It'd be kind of like the classic storybook ending. Not saying that they necessarily need to win it, but given where they are right now and the fact of the matter that they can control their own destiny, I like Clark Atlanta's chances.
Just given where they were last season, they were not very good last season.
Well, right, but I'm just saying. But when you put in consideration, what they've done this year, I'd like for them to be able to move that, take that momentum, and at the very least get to an opportunity to play for an SIAC title.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see how this all plays out. Like, I think Jared was kind of right last year when he made his bold proclamation that the SIAC was probably the best conference in Black college football. And we see here a lot of really good teams are going to in the running for a title, and some of them will be left out just because of the circumstances of the conference being so strong. So this should be a fun final few games to decide all this. So hope everybody gets to watch them, because it's going to be very, very, very intriguing to say the least. And now that we got all the football out of the way, Wednesday night, As we know, we talk about other things other than black college sports. And so, unless you're living under a rock, you do know that we have a new president-elect, Donald Trump. Second time we're going to be in office. He defeated Kamala Harris in the general election last night. I think they officially called the race this morning. Trump got all the electoral votes and won the popular vote too, which was surprising. I felt if he had won, he would have won on electoral college and not the popular vote. But a lot of people out there really like Donald Trump. So yeah, so Trump is going to be our new overlord for the next 4 years. And so before the show, I saw Chris's face, I saw Ken's face, I saw Jared's face. They didn't look very happy. Like had gone through the fog of war just by consuming all this political content and watching the election, the results roll in, and everybody finds out, oh crap, if you're a Democrat, it is that Trump's going to win office despite his baggage, and we all know what his baggage is. So yeah, so fellas, how we feeling about the outcome of the election, and are we surprised how it turned out, or are we not surprised how it turned out? Starting with Chris Stevens.
The football that Lucy Van Pelt held down for Charlie Brown for many, many years and picked back up as just he was about to kick that ball has happened to black people again in this country. There's nothing that Kamala Harris could have done outside of being a man, quite frankly, that would have gotten her the votes necessary to win this election. And it's very disappointing. I mean, black women have warned us for years, quite honestly, that they are the most marginalized. They are the most disrespected. I mean, one of Malcolm X's greatest quotes was, the most disrespected and most underprotected person in the world is the black woman. And we watched people of all stripes. And before I begin, I was the one who had the most to say about black men potentially not voting for Kamala Harris. I think 80% or somewhere north of 80% of black men voted for Kamala Harris. So let me say the line for apologies and forms here. Brothers, I'm sorry. Quite honestly. I overreacted, I panicked, but we showed up like we were supposed to.
You know what? Now let me just stop there. I don't think it was 80%, Chris. Was it 80%? I thought it was something like 73%.
I can check the exit polls, but
go ahead. Sorry, I'm sorry, but because
it had to. I thought it was close to 80%, but but still, I mean, everybody that was supposed to do their part did their part, except the people who swore that they didn't want to do away with a woman's choice and the Department of Education and all of that. But those white women, those Lucy Van Pelts, they pulled that football up from us again. 57% voted for Trump this time. 57.
Yeah, so for black men, Chris, it was 77%.
Could that be a little higher? Yes, but other than that, I really don't have any complaints. I mean, and like I said, I apologize to the brothers that I flipped out on when we did that episode a few weeks ago, because we showed up. We did our part. We voted for Kamala Harris. And it's just a fact of the matter that this country was always headed full steam towards white supremacy, white supremacist ideals, fascism, and Nazism. And there's no denying that it's here now. We've tried to kick that can down the road as far as we could kick it, but now that can is right back in our faces and it's not going anywhere. And just the overall disappointment of it, like we talked about the Board of Education. This is the HBCUs that are struggling right now. They are definitely in the danger zone. There are so many schools that are short on funding, that are in the crosshairs of, college boards as far as accreditation goes. It's going to be madness at all levels. And I think 2016 was just like a shock point. Like, yo, people really elected this dude. But now 2024 is like, yo, we are really in trouble because there's nobody going to check him either. Because there were 44 people on his staff. 40 of those people said, no, don't do it again. and America did it again anyway. So I think just like I said, overall disappointment of it. I told the guys before we came on this morning, I jumped up in my car 3:00 in the morning because I started checking results and I was like, oh my God, it's really about to happen again. So I just drove around for an hour or so trying to ask myself, how could this happen again? And then I just reminded myself that, yeah, white people are who they are. And we're going to bear the brunt of that for a very long time. So just, I don't know. That's why my subhead is, where do we go from here? Because I really don't know. I know people are going to say, yeah, we got to pick ourselves up and form a plan. But yes, right now, the time, there will be a time for that. But right now, the time for just feeling your feelings, I think, is important because we are in for some mess.
Yeah, I can't wait to think about the mess that some of us are going to be in.
In the words of Ice Cube in the movie Boys in the Hood, I woke up this morning feeling like he felt. I hadn't been up this early in a long time. It was how bad it was for me. I'm trying to find, you know what? Let me read something, and you guys may have seen this. This was on. I'm guessing it appeared in a form of memes in various social media platforms and so forth. I don't know who did this or who said this, but I think there's a certain element of truth to it. This was somebody screenshotted this, and I guess this was somebody either on Instagram, on Twitter, and it says, a black podcaster summed it up. It's a masterclass in white privilege. He can't say enough racist things to be a racist. He can't comment enough. He can't commit enough crimes to be a criminal. He can't fail enough times to be a failure. He can't say enough stupid things to be stupid. The idea overshadows any reality. The quote unquote Christian savior who doesn't know the Bible, the adulterer who screws porn stars and steals from charities. It's the promise of the protection of whiteness he represents. A masterclass in white privilege. My position was I said, you know what, as far as I was concerned, policy, I threw policy out the window. And I said that this just basically comes down to the point as to whether or not you want Donald Trump to be your president or not. And apparently majority of the Americans want Donald Trump. This society that tends to boast about its overwhelming Christian values. And you would think that somewhere in those Christian values, you would think that a certain modicum or just a certain element of decency would prevail. Anything else, or would be at the very minimum that you would expect someone. I understand that for some, there are those real, those real life problems that you face. But basically what America said, screw decency. We want this man in. And we all know that Kamala Harris couldn't have half of the issues that this man had. She wouldn't even be on the ballot right now. And this man, despite, we still haven't talked about the felonies, all of the other dumb stuff he said before, and yet he gets a pass. If that isn't the definition of white privilege, I don't know what is. And I will simply say this, Chris, because you were saying that you want to apologize to certain brothers. Now, I'm going to just say this. My understanding is, while Black Americans overwhelmingly voted for Kamala Harris, if I'm not mistaken, there were still an element. I don't think the numbers were as high as they were compared to 2020. There were still an element of Black men who voted for Donald Trump. Period. I mean, the fact that the fact that black folks overwhelmingly voted for Kamala Harris, that's not a surprise. That was going to happen regardless. But the individuals, Donald Trump did experience an increase in black voters this week. He experienced an increase in everybody, to be honest with you. But do know that there was a shift, and I dare say that shift, I think anywhere from 5 to 6 to 7%, it made a difference. Silas, yeah, great. Look, but it comes down to this: white people wanted him to be president.
Well, I will say,
but what I'm saying is, but it wasn't just white folks. There were Hispanics, white women, white men, black men wanted him to be president. But my point is that even I guess, surprisingly for a lot of us, and folks will say, you know what, this is not the time to play identity politics. Well, you can't call this. It is what it is at this point. This is white privilege as true as it can be. It doesn't. The example doesn't get any clearer than this. So I still believe that there were brothers who just simply wasn't ready to have, because brothers got upset about people calling them out for playing the misogyny card. Unfortunately, I know some folks. I have conversations with some people today who told me they knew members in their own family who were black men who voted for Donald Trump because they did not want a woman to lead. I'm not making this up. I promise you. So the misogyny thing was real. So despite what people may tell you, yeah, brothers, 75 or 73, 77% of Americans, blacks voted for Kamala Harris. That just simply means that 23% black Americans voted for Donald Trump. And within that 23%, there were still a certain percentage of voters who wasn't comfortable with the fact of a woman or black woman being president. So yeah, the misogyny card still plays. It still exists. Multiple things can be true as to why folks wanted Donald Trump. But let's not try to dismiss the misogyny card here. That's why they call it misogyny, because it's misogyny. That's why they call it white privilege, because that's what we saw. People calling this a master class, it is dead on. That's exactly what it is. And I didn't see the video, but I saw a graphic on YouTube, and I think it was on Roland Martin, where he says that white America is going to get exactly what they deserve. You ask for it, you're going to get it. And I agree wholeheartedly. Because I'm telling you, give it time. Give it time. I'm done.
yeah, just like thinking about like how we got here. If we really pay close attention to not just national politics, but local, state politics, we shouldn't be surprised that Donald Trump won. And I go back to 2020. This is my theory on the whole thing. I could be wrong about this, but in the middle of the pandemic, when everything was shut down, and especially schools were shut down, and a lot of folks were mandated to wear masks and get vaccines and all this stuff. And it was from that point where this group of people, MAGA people, whatever you want to call them, conservatives, they became angry over that because they were no longer in control of how they could navigate their lives. Obviously, the pandemic kind of limited that for everybody, but they felt especially attacked because they didn't have the freedom of movement that they had. They couldn't go where they wanted to go. They couldn't make decisions about their family, about their workplace, anything like that. And the whole debate about masks and like why we got to, and they were so upset about wearing masks in grocery stores and wearing masks in businesses and wearing masks at work and getting vaccinated. That kind of like galvanized a lot of them to say, we're not going to take it anymore. The next time this comes around, we're going to make sure that the left, the Democrats, no longer control us. And so what happened? I lived in Oklahoma during that time, which is the reddest of the reddest state you can possibly live in America. And they not only said no more mask mandates, no more vaccine mandates, they went after the education system to the point where they passed a law that says you cannot teach certain aspects of history if it made white people feel bad about it. And now, fast forward 4 years later, we're seeing DEI programs in corporate America and especially in academia come under fire or either go away because people who do not like that, they don't want any part of it. They don't want the rehashing of slavery. They do not want these things to be taught in school. They do not want to be identified as possibly racist. And so all of that's taken place these last 4 years, and January 6th was a part of that too, culminated in last night. And I will say, Ken, you're right. Misogyny did have something to do with it. There are a lot of men who did not want to see a woman in office. Racism, obviously, top of the list too. But I will say this, though. Democrats kind of lost their way too. They allowed Donald Trump to run as a progressive Republican because Trump was saying, like, do you want these policies to continue where you can't afford the groceries, where inflation is rampant, there are no jobs, and all this stuff. And the Democrats, fair or not, they ran on the message of we have to preserve democracy. We got to maintain the status quo. We don't want chaos. No one wants chaos. But they ran a message similar to Republicans do. And had Kamala Harris, top of the ticket, courting Republicans, courting moderates to be in a party, courting the Cheneys, courting the Bushes, courting people of that ilk. And I'm thinking, like, this is not a really good strategy because, like, the Democrats were known as the party of the working class, the party of helping out the poor, helping out disenfranchised. And you're courting the Cheneys. You're bragging about, oh, I got all these Republicans on my side who are anti-Trump. And that's all well and good. But at the end of the day, like, what does your base want? And sad to say, I think a lot of voters were turned off by their constant messaging about reproductive rights. It's important. It's an important issue, nonetheless. But like when you are part of an administration that's unpopular and people are pointing to your administration as to why their lives are the way they are, you have to run a message that speaks to that. And I think along the way, the Democrats kind of lost their way and not focusing on pocketbook issues and playing a lot into identity and playing a lot into women and playing a lot into reproductive rights, which are all important things. But like we saw how the map ended up turning out. It was tremendously red. And a lot of people who said they voted for Trump, who did not vote for him in 2020, by the way, said, yep, I voted for him because of financial circumstances that impact me, my family, and my business. And you may say that's pretty selfish, but that's reality. I was watching an interview last night on MSNBC where a guy said like he normally voted Democrat, but he voted for Trump because you guys live out in Arizona. He voted for Trump because he saw like how inflation and certain policies had ruined his business and kind of made him have to tighten up his budget. And he didn't want to go through that again. I think a lot of Democrats should have spoke to that reality from Jump Street, but it's kind of hard to do that when you have replaced the incumbent president with a vice president 4 months before election starts. So Kamala Harris was behind the 8 ball from that standpoint. But yeah, like we should saw this coming a long time ago. To me, it's not surprising. It's disappointing, but not surprising nonetheless. Jared Hoffman, your turn.
Let me start off with what I can only see as the only positive from this election season. Congratulations to Angela Alsobrooks. For those who don't know, in the state of Maryland, she becomes the first Black woman to serve on the Senate in the state of Maryland. So now the state of Maryland has a Black governor in Wes Moore. Baltimore has a Black mayor in Brandon Scott. and we have a black woman as the mayor in DC, and Muriel Bowser. Outside of that, slim pickings and trying to think positively in this time, quite honestly. For all of you who voted for Trump and you don't have 6 figures coming into your household, I pray for you when them taxes come. For all of you who are looking for a new house in the next couple of years, I pray for you when you see them prices. For all of you who have voted for Trump and are trying to seek an education for your young children, I pray for you, because it is not going to be good to you. I pray that for all of you who voted for Trump, and at some point you decide you want to start a family and you want to have a child and you voted against reproductive rights, I hope it goes well for you, because you, as Ken said, you brought this on yourself. This man insulted anybody you can think of. He insulted black people. He insulted Latinos, Puerto Ricans to be specific. This man, before he was elected the first time, made fun of a disabled person. That is a real video. That is not a fake video. That is very real. And they elected him after he did that. There was people who said they didn't vote for him when he was up for re-election in 2020 because of his response to COVID. But they vote him again this time around. What changed? That still happened. That wasn't erased from our memory. A lot of y'all say that, well, Trump, the economy from 2016 to 2020 when Trump was president was amazing. What did Trump contribute to that? I'm willing to ask anyone, what did Trump contribute to the economy from 2016 to 2020? Look at the unemployment rates towards the end of when he was in office. Look at the economy. Look at GDP towards the end of when he was in office. Look at the rampant violence that occurred while he was in office. I looked at this stat today. In 2020, there were 110 school shootings. The year before that, it was 116. Now, why is that important? COVID isolated us in April. So that means in 4 months, barely even 4 months, 3 and some change months, there were 110 school shootings, and the year before there were 116 in 12 months. Now, am I blaming Trump for that? Maybe, because he's in bed with the NRA, and he has emboldened people from that side to believe that they have a right to carry a gun and they have a right to use it. And I can't fathom this man incites a riot because he lost an election fair and square, and they still vote for him again. And he's talking about wanting to pardon people who are a part of it. Pardon people who forcefully barged into a government building. I need you people to know that the building, absolutely, they absolutely do. And the thing, and I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that. The thing that I underestimated, there are a lot of people who don't listen during these debates. They already have it made up in their mind who they are voting for. So it doesn't matter what you say during these campaign trails. It doesn't matter how many people he insults. It doesn't matter how many times he says he doesn't want to be fact-checked because he wants to lie as freely as possible. It doesn't matter. These people are led. These people are blind, being led by a blind man. That's just how it is. They're stuck in their ways. We have had a way of doing things in this country for centuries, and they are not ready to change the status quo. If they didn't want a white woman, we should have known they wouldn't be ready for a black woman. That's just how it is. And I'm so sick and tired of people talking about qualifications. Last time I checked, Kamala Harris was an attorney general. She served on the Senate, and she was vice president. She went to law school, got a law degree. So what are we talking about qualifications? What are we talking about? And we're talking about a man who is a businessman who has had business go into bankruptcy. Look it up. Multiple businesses have gone into bankruptcy. Look at all the lawsuits that he had before he took office the first time.
And since then too.
And since then. And all of the sexual misconduct that he has been accused of and has been sued about, pressed charges for.
And has even bragged about what he likes to do.
And the man said that he would date his daughter.
He did say that.
Yep.
I swear I am not making that up.
He did say that.
He did.
He said that on Howard Stern.
But that's the man they wanted in office because they don't care about the facts. I'm wasting my breath now because they're not going to hear this. You know why? Because I'm saying too many things that make sense. And MSNBC, I don't know if you guys saw this. They put out a video about all the times during this campaign trail that he said, hey, I don't even need your votes. So what does that mean? And then all of the fake bomb threats that were sent to all these polling stations, I believe in Georgia and Michigan and other states that had fake bomb threats. This was lined up from the start, and we should have seen it. So going forward, do not pay attention to what the polls say. Do not pay attention to the crowd sizes at his rallies. Orange Julius is who I'm talking about. Do not pay attention to any of that stuff. Go out and do your civic duty. And for all of y'all that didn't vote, for all of y'all that used the write-in candidate, I hope you know the blood is on your hands too. I hope y'all know that you are a part of this too. For all of y'all that say, oh, this election system is corrupt, I ain't voting no way. I hope that you know that everything that happens over these next 4 years, and maybe even beyond that, the blood is on your hands.
Let me just say this, Jerry, and I'm not trying to dismiss, but all I will just simply say, you said for those that, I'll just say, people did vote. They just voted, they just don't realize that they voted against their own self-interest. Let me also, and we'll end after this, but I want to read this as well. This is another tweet that came from Wendell Pierce, actor, and who you've seen him on multiple television shows. And this takes it a step further because Trump is president-elect. They flipped the Senate. The House is still in flux right now. But here's another element to this. And this is quote, this is what Wendell Pierce tweeted. Elections have consequences. The Supreme Court will be changed for a generation. I'll never see a moderate court again in my lifetime. Alito and Thomas will step down and Trump will appoint 40-year-old partisans to the bench. The damage he is about to inflict on our institutions the next 2 years will be irreparable. This is not theory. It's been discussed long before the election about where Alito and Thomas are right now. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. And because of the level of cooperation he will have with the Senate and possibly even with the House, not to mention that this is the same Supreme Court that pretty much said this man can do whatever he wants to. They give him, this. Think about. The man told you he wanted to be a dictator in so many words, and it's lining up to be that way. And I'm gonna probably say something, but you know what? But some of you dumbass Negroes trying to be profound. Some of you have a tendency to be profound in thought, not realizing that you either sound profoundly stupid when you say it, or you look profoundly stupid when you do it. And believe me when I tell you, you're going to regret it. And others are also going to have to pay the price for the decisions that you made trying to be profound. When the real reason, and the real reason was some of you, and I'm talking to the dumb Negroes out there. When your only justification for not wanting to vote for Kamala Harris, who's clearly qualified, was to question whether or not she was Black. I'm Ken Rashad. He's Jared Hoffman. He's Kendrick Marshall. He's Chris Stevens. I want to thank you guys for taking a moment to watch this special edition of the Roundtable, if you will.
Ken, Jared wants to say something.
Oh, my bad. Okay, go ahead, Jared.
I'm sorry. I just would be remiss if I didn't say this to end the show. Prayers to the people of Knoxville College. For those who haven't seen what happened, Knoxville College, one of their old buildings was set on fire. And just want to send well wishes to them, because having to rebuild that's going to be very difficult. Yeah, and just prayers to the Knoxville community, who are going to have to deal with the blowback of that. Sorry, I just wanted to get that out there.
I think we're done.